welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. Today, this video is going to be more of an opinion video, which I guess a lot of my videos are, but I want to talk about why I believe that Americans are so obsessed with money. I have been accused of this in one of my comments, and this used to be something that offended me when people would say this to me, but now I don't really care. I just kind of own it, and yeah, maybe it's true, but I think that we are all products of our environment, and perhaps this is something that is just a result of me having been brought up in the US, maybe having been brought up in my particular family, and maybe sometimes comes out of a necessity or even a desire to do things that I want. As I've joked, will work for travel, so that's always been a priority for me, and obviously traveling can be a fairly expensive hobby. So I think part of it was being raised by my dad. My dad has said, and my dad still says over and over again, time is money. And I think this is a thing that Americans think about a lot. Another thing is I think that the way that our society is structured, I think about one of the conversations I had with one of my best friends growing up, which is like, what is American culture? It's sort of this melting pot or hodgepodge of a bunch of different cultures in one place, but what defines American culture? And, she would say American culture is capitalism, and I do agree with that. I think that from a young age, like I've mentioned already, we're taught to compete with each other, and we're taught that buying things is going to make us happy. We have a lot of money that's spent on advertising, a lot of advertising that does happen in general, and it feels like everything is just targeted towards, making money, getting money. Money is the primary message. And I am going to compare this a bit to my experience with living in Finland and how different this is, because I know that this is not how the rest of the world functions. Something else I've always known from a young age is that, the Nordic countries have one of the highest standards of living and are notoriously difficult to immigrate to. I remember knowing that, but never really knowing in the future that I would end up in Finland and then begin to understand why that's the case. So, when I live in the US, I am constantly getting junk mail, as we call it, but sometimes it's not really junk mail. Sometimes it's something that will actually help me make money, so I'm going to take advantage of it. Where when you open up this credit card and you spend $500, and you get a $200 credit statement if you spent that $500 within 30 days or 90 days, and that would be unheard of in Finland. In Finland, I have one bank account and I have one debit card. Well, guess what? In the US, if I open up multiple bank accounts, then they're also going to give me $200 if I keep, I don't know, X amount of dollars in my bank account also for 90 days. So this is something that is probably unique to America, and I think just highlights how much advertising goes into trying to get people to make more money. Aside from spending more money, where it's like you constantly get these discount things, or, oh, here's a coupon, or everything is targeted at trying to get you to come into the store to save money, when in reality you're really spending money because they're trying to get you there in the first place. It's not something I saw a lot of in Finland, and that's why I'm like, wow, this is a very American thing. Then also, I'm going to do a comment shout out to, is it Monkey Laud, which is actually my childhood friend, so thanks for supporting my channel, and where he was talking a bit about, and this is a good point, and I'm going to put this in here. I'm also going to drop this comment down here so you can see it, or at least the part of it I want to highlight, but it is true that when you work for a bigger company, they might pay you less because of the snob appeal of, oh, I get to say that I work for NASA, right? But I think that's a little bit hard with NASA because NASA's the government. And I think one thing that needs to be understood is that working for the government comes with different perks than working for a private company. And I know this now that I've worked for both. So different retirement plans. We often talk about how pensions don't exist in the US anymore, which really sucks. All of our retirement money is now tied up in the stock market, which, although the US stock market is pretty stable and goes up over time, it's still less guaranteed, I would say, than, pension funds, which really just don't exist anymore. So the thrift savings plan that the government offers to people is probably, who work for the government, is probably the closest thing to a pension plan that still exists. Now that I no longer work for the government and I don't have the thrift savings plan, I now have a 401k that my company offers. I know people have other variations of that. And then I think there's also a Roth 401k or something like that. Okay, yeah. There are 4 different types of retirement funds, and I learned about this on Wikipedia recently. I'm going to drop a link in that to that below here. And all right, so this is another thing. Like, when you work in Finland, you get a paycheck. You get money that comes to your bank account every month. Yes, you also get that in the US. But the other thing that people don't realize is you have to make choices with how much of that you're giving away to retiring and how much you're giving away to healthcare. Whereas if I lived in Finland, those would be things that would already be covered and decided for me. At least that's my understanding. If you are a Finnish person watching this and you disagree with what I'm saying, please let me know, because I also did have a job in Finland, so I was, getting money that way, and I understand that, they take my taxes out, and I don't have to pay taxes at the end of the year. It is so weird, honestly, that in the US, you have to pay taxes every year, and that there's sort of a game out of trying to maximize how much money you don't have to pay to the IRS, right? Like, everybody is trying to do this because, well, why would you give the government more money than, you get to keep to pay for your own expenses? And I think the reason why this is becoming an especially difficult issue is because of the way the housing market is going. And, sometimes I kick myself and I'm like, why didn't I just do the normal person thing and graduate at age 21, start working immediately, and already have a house so that I don't have to worry about this? Well, because then, quite frankly, I wouldn't have been fluent in Russian, which was one of my biggest childhood goals, was becoming fluent in a second language, which I am proud I've accomplished. And to me, that is intangible. And also, your brain starts kind of going downhill after the age of 25, which I'm above the age of 25. So I knew that was something I needed to do while I was young. Whereas obviously owning a house is something I can do for the rest of my life. And that was also what I said when I decided to leave NASA, was that, I can get back into NASA at any point during my career, but this opportunity to go study Russian in Kyrgyzstan is now or never, which is part of why I took it. Okay, so with my paycheck every month, I have to contribute. I don't have to, but I choose to. And the joke that I make is all of my great grandmothers have lived to like 95. Okay, so I'm probably going to also live to 95. So better to, prepare for that and, accidentally die earlier with more money than to be 95 or live that long and then at 80 you're like running out of money. This is the way I look at it. And, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. That's all true, but I guess I've always been the person who has wanted to stave off short-term gratification for long-term gratification, long-term accomplishment, and, that sense of accomplishment is much greater than, the short-term I get from, I don't know, scrolling through Instagram Reels, which I honestly don't do, and I am amazed that people can do that. I don't even have the attention span to make, like, shorter videos for this, so maybe I'll get to that at some point. All right, so going back to, I'm setting aside money for, my 401k and then also healthcare. Wow, I did not understand how crazy healthcare was until I started living here. In fact, I will admit this. Sometimes I have just done something in Finland and, paid for it, because paying for something in Finland, healthcare wise, is cheaper than me using my insurance plan here to get it done. Like, I had some knee problem that was hurting, and then I went to the doctors in Finland and went to the hospital actually, because I went on like a Sunday, and I always have to wait there. It's fine, I just bring my work. That's actually a funny story, because that doctor I think I may have told the story in another video. That doctor didn't speak English that well, but then because he's like, I had to learn Finnish for the job. I'm like, okay, well, what do you speak? He's like, Russian. I was like, all right, let's just do this in Russian. So yeah, Russian always coming in usefully for me. There's another example, me trying to get my knee checked out. All right, so there's stuff like that. With my healthcare plan, all right, and so this is another kind of thing with the government's going to pay you less money, but it's going to give you a better retirement plan, and it's also going to give you a better healthcare plan. Now, when I was working at NASA, I was still on my dad's healthcare plan, because you can stay on your parents' healthcare plan until the age of 26. My dad's also now retired, so that's separate, but I'm also above the age of 26. I have my own healthcare plan. And wow, once I had my healthcare plan, I was like, now I really understand why people complain about healthcare in the US. I was kind of blind to that, or I tried to like not really use healthcare that much growing up, because like, I'm fortunate that I have not had so many healthcare issues that I've needed to attend to, so I don't go to the doctors like a ton. And I think I also kind of knew it was a lot, so I just wouldn't go. The way my healthcare plan works now, and I'm a single person on my own healthcare plan, is my healthcare plan, I think, cost me $5,000 every year. And on top of that, I need to spend $3,000 or hit this $3,000 deductible before certain percentages start kicking in. So I'm going to pay 100% of whatever visit until I hit $3,000, at which point maybe I'm going to pay 20%, but you're still paying. And then another fun thing that we like to do for tax reasons is something called an HSA, health savings account, because these are tax-free dollars that you can put into a separate bank account, because we love to have 5 million bank accounts here. And that's where, when I'm going and paying my healthcare bills, they're going to come out of that account. So when you think about how much money you're putting away for retirement, putting away for healthcare, oh, and another thing, Roth IRAs. What is an IRA? Individual retirement account. The maximum amount for these has changed quite a bit over the last several years. And first it was 6,000, and then last year was 6,500, and this year it was 7,000. So this is another thing. I'm like, well, let me make sure I'm setting aside $7,000 a year to put into my Roth IRA, because as I've explained, I'm probably going to live a while. So that's where a lot of the money's going. And so now if we think about what am I taking home and where can I live, right? Because this is, we want to talk about like money obsession, money dysmorphia, whatever. I'm very concerned about my living situation, which I talk about a lot on this channel, and the fact that, I'm 28, and there was a TD Bank survey. I'm going to post some of that right here about how it becomes embarrassing once you're 28 years old and you're still living at home. I found that shocking. And so, because I'm thinking about, why is this such a big deal that I'm still living at home? Well, because I'm apparently an age where I'm supposed to have been moved out. I was also reading a lot of articles, however, that were talking about how people would move back in with their parents during COVID to try and save up enough money for a down payment on a house. And there's a lot of stuff about when your starter home becomes your forever home, because a lot of older people I talk to are like, oh, well, the first home you buy is not the home you're going to stay in forever. And I'm like, all right, well, what news articles are you reading? Because they're probably not the same ones that I'm reading. So when I also think about, okay, well, what if I just rented? Well, I've explained that rent in my area is like $1,800. I will be transparent in saying that after I contribute all of this money to retirement and all of this money to healthcare, that is more than 50% of what I'm taking home. So I can't do that, because your housing costs are supposed to be 30% of your monthly income if you're trying to budget wisely. So I think one of the issues right now, and why people become more obsessed with money in the US, is because you're not really able to meet your basic needs. And this is very confusing compared to Finland, where everybody's guaranteed a certain standard of living, even the hobos on the street. They're not hobos, but what would you call them? The people who are just drunk all the time walking around on the street, because those people they exist in Finland, and the government just gives them a place to live, and they're fine, and they just, continue being alcoholics, and they just have everything they need. And, we don't have that here. You have, like, people on the street, you have people begging, and that's hard to see. I have a hard time with homelessness. That's why I'm not a big city person. I mean, it just hurts me emotionally. Yeah, it's sad. And, in Finland, it's like everybody has a place to live, everybody has enough food. Like, if you for some reason can't support yourself, like, the government takes care of you. We don't have that here. And just I have a good job, and, I am like, how the heck would I move out right now? Again, I'm willing to stave off short term for long term, so I'm more of like, okay, I'd like to save up and get a house. That's more of like where my line of thought is. It's also part of the American dream. And as I've mentioned before, having a house is a bigger indicator that you've succeeded at this point than, just having a college degree. So, one of the issues I've talked with my brother about, because he was listening to a podcast on renting versus buying and all that, is he's like, people come in, they're making, well, really, these big builders come in, they drive up the rent, and it's becoming capitalized like everything else, which he's like, this isn't a luxury item. This is a necessity. And when you start cutting off access to necessity, like housing, that's going to create a lot of issues. So, I think that is a really big problem. So when I think about, is it obsession with money, or is it a desire to support yourself financially and, do so in a way that makes sense and is not putting you in a lot of debt? I know that Americans hold a lot of debt. The way that I grew up, and apparently your view on debt does have a lot to do with how you're raised, is that you don't go into debt if you don't need to. And the only things you should go into debt for are houses and cars. And like credit card debt, I think is ridiculous. I'm not a supporter of that. I talk about that in my credit card recommendation video. And, these are kind of like my goals, my priorities, and what I think about. So, yeah, why are Americans so obsessed with money? I think that it is hardwired into the way that our entire society is structured. And unless you're going to go be a hobo and live under a bridge somewhere, I think it's really hard to get out of this mentality of, you have all these things thrown at you for you to spend. And then now the fact that just access to housing is becoming so difficult, unless I picked up and moved somewhere the middle of nowhere, it's difficult. And I think the other thing that I'd like to mention really quick about housing again is that you pay for your safety in the US. And I think some people might know this. I remember my one friend who worked at NASA, her telling a story about her first cheap house that she had when she was living in in Texas, and she had just gotten a job. She was a single woman alone. She had this guy who was like carving stuff on her door, and she's like, the rent was cheap, but it wasn't worth it. When I moved, I had to like make sure the guy didn't follow me and stuff like that. So it's like, yes, you can live in cheaper places. What is the issue with living in cheaper places, however? It's that you're not necessarily going to be safe. This is the biggest problem. And, when I think about why do I want to live in certain places, well, I am a single woman, or even if I'm not single, I'm a woman. So if I'm, out by myself, that is still a risk. So I think that this is one of the biggest problems, is that you're paying for your safety. I grew up in an area of Maryland where I talk about that I did not really like my childhood there because it was kind of not safe. And I was exposed to things as a kid that I wish I wasn't. So I think that everybody wants the best for their kids, and it's like, I don't want to put my kids or myself in a situation where they're exposed to things that are not okay, like drugs and maybe some other inappropriate things at a young age. So that's everything I have to say about money. I think it branches off into housing, it branches off into consumerism, the way that our money is structured when we get paid, and I think that this all contributes to what probably is a money dysmorphia thing, which I was also seeing recently that is pretty common with millennials and Gen Z. And as happens a lot, people, the wealth gap keeps getting wider. And, we'll see what happens, if there will be another housing crash or what. I don't know how long this is going to go on for, and I don't really know what the solution is. Well, I mean, maybe I have my own beliefs on that, but that's personal viewpoint. Anyway, so thanks for watching this. I hope it was interesting. I'm going to be curious to see what people have to say about it, because I think it's a taboo topic a little bit and might get some people riled up. Alright, so thank you everybody for your time and attention, and until my next video, I'll probably take a little break over the weekend because I kind of need one, and so I'll probably talk to you on Monday. Maybe before, but we'll see. Alright, thank you everybody, and goodbye. Have a nice weekend.